So now, I know this was going to be a long meeting yesterday, and I said this on the radio yesterday that I hope the mayor goes home for a little cat nap. So did you go home before? Because what a lot of folks don't know, of course, the council meeting starts at 5:30, but yesterday you guys started about 4 o'clock because you guys were dealing with budgets.
Yeah, that's right. Started at 4 o'clock. Got done, 9:30, and I went down and started signing documents. I got home, sometime after 10 o'clock, so good five hours or so to that meeting, I guess.
Well, I was following along last night, at certain parts. And the part that kind of struck me was garbage fees. We're going to play a little clip from last night's city council meeting.
For solid waste collection fees, we are proposing a 2.5% increase, generating about $237,000 in revenue. Going forward, we're projecting similar increases, 2.5% increases for the next 4 years as well. So this increase would only be a 27-cent per month increase.
Okay, your thoughts on that then? The council approved that last night.
Yeah, we did. That was on the collection side, and also we approved fee increases at the landfill. For people in the city, those landfill costs are included in their collection. When I take a load of brush to the landfill, I don't have to pay anything extra. I'm a city resident, and generally the same for other people in Yellowstone County. But people outside of Yellowstone County and commercial haulers, they've got to pay when they get to the landfill. So yeah, we increased those. It's a little bit above inflation, but not really very much. And so that will provide some real stability for the users probably for the next 3 or 4 years. We'll see similar increases. So that's a good news. They'll be dependable and stable. The other good news is it still puts us well below most other major cities in Montana for what we charge people for garbage pickup and for landfill.
I don't believe that I'm saying this, but I am saying this, because you hear about these increases, the water, the garbage. Why don't you just say, starting on July 1st, every homeowner in Billings is going to be taxed an extra $20 every month. And then you just put all the reserve fees into one big pot, so then people won't moan and groan a couple of years from now when you ask for another one. You won't have to ask for another one because you have all these reserves. So you guys ever think about doing something like that?
Well, that's an interesting question. That the reality is that legally we can't do that because we can't raise people's taxes. We can't increase the percentage of the value that we charge people because Billings is one of only 2 cities in the state of Montana, the other one being the big metropolitan area of Sunburst, Montana, that has a cap in our charter that prevents us from raising people's taxes beyond where they are now. So as a percentage, we're capped at 74 mils for our general fund. But on these fees, which are just a fee for service, we do increase those to keep up with the cost of the service.
Another big issue last night was a noise ordinance. So this is something that seems like it never goes away. It keeps coming up and up and up. So where are we sitting on this?
The council continued to work on it. We have a draft, but there were some technical changes that council still wants to make, so we are going to establish a subcommittee to try to work through those, also using a noise expert out of the School of Mines in Butte. But the big consternation there is noise that comes from stadiums at sports events and major events, Dallas, Rocky Mountain College, and the current draft doesn't have any sort of noise, any sort of decibel limit, and the council wasn't comfortable with just giving them carte blanche on the noise level. So we want to go back and look at that.
Let's talk a little bit about that 4 o'clock meeting that you had, of course, the budgets with the fire department, police department. I talked with Chief St. John last week, and where he sees that he can cut a little bit of money is the overtime. Is that kind of the same situation with fire department?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the budget is in just fine shape. As we were talking about before, most of the budget's in that public works department, water, sewer, streets. All of that's just fine. The place where we find real budget pressure is in that general fund, which is the police and the fire department, parks, administration. And we've got those budget pressures because costs are going up, inflation, modest pay increases, and we have had new hires for the police department and the fire department. But the tax revenue has gone up less because our public safety mill levy from 2004 was a capped $8 million. And so that buys a little bit less over those 15 years. And so we've got about an $8 million gap in that general fund. So we've got some reserves, and we could use about 2/3 of those reserves to fill that, but we're not comfortable using all those reserves. So that's why we're looking at reductions in overtime, other cuts to try to buy some time while we educate the public and ourselves and eventually go out for a public safety mill levy. But overtime's a big one. The police department, oftentimes when you see police officers out at an event, for example, they're getting overtime, and that gets expensive. So the chief is going to try to cut back, and also in the fire department, cut back on some of that overtime.
Now, if we would have still kept a lot of those franchise fees, what is that, about $2.5 million a year, something like that?
Yeah, that's right. So, so these reductions in police and fire, and also not addressing some of the deferred maintenance in the fire department, is what is being proposed, and I think the direction that the council is going to go for. But those are, it's not like those are painless. Those have real impacts on our ability to train our police and fire, especially these special teams. The way that they bring all of those people together is to pay them overtime because they're not necessarily working at the time for training, and that has impact. But it's the frustrating thing for me is right now, without that franchise fee, we're actually going to be collecting less from the average taxpayer, but still having these cuts. And I don't know that that's fair. I think we need to look at a way to increase that Park District 1 to generate some money for that general fund.